All right, next update, update number 20. It's getting a little bit harder to make these things. Life's getting busy, but I'm trying my best to keep up with it and have the good content like I've always had that's thorough. Not gonna have a fancy intro this time, so I'm just gonna kick off with what I was able to get completed. Some of the footage is pretty darn old because it was compiled over quite a bit of time while I completed projects. It is what it is. Here we go. So here's my stuff I got going on the dash here. I added an hour meter in place of the air filter minder, replaced with one of the electronic light switches. I know some people don't like these. I like them. I used them in my time in the Marines, and I find them a little bit easier to switch when you're driving blackout and things like that. You've probably seen this switch here. It's for dome lights. At this time, the project is not completely finished, and I do plan to move it, but I'll talk about it. Before I finished compiling the video, I kind of wrapped this up. And you can kind of see another thing. I ended up mounting a single speaker there and got the other one mounted over there. I've tried to record this at night and it comes out like crap on the camera, but it's just enough light with it turned up all the way to be able to see in the cab. And then, like I said, it flickers when you record it because it's LED, but you can adjust it with the dimmer on the dash bulbs. I wanted to talk about this really quick. These are the blackout lights. There's a couple different versions of these. There's some bigger ones that have an LED in them still, and then there's like these thinner ones that are basically plastic. And then even the brackets are a little bit different. They're really simple to wire. They have a ground. The ground would just go with whatever it's mounted to, so it's grounded out in the truck. Then they normally have a Packard connector. This one, the Packard connector is cut off. And then for my project, I just put a butt connector and connected it to the circuit off the switch. And to mount it in the truck, this part of the bracket wasn't there, so it's just sort of wedged up. And then I put a rivet nut in there, the opposite of this one, and drilled a hole and went through the cab, and it just kind of wedges up in there, and then bent the cab down a little bit. It all goes together. And then where that's bolted up is where this is grounded to. This you've probably seen too. Finally got this wired up. So let me point out what I did here the best that I can. So you can see the back side of the hour meter has positive and negative. I just tapped in on the truck's power switch. Then it has a ground, and I grounded it on the screw over there. Then it has a signal. I did attempt to use the signal pin off of the oil pressure because I would have rather had it running hours when the engine was actually running and not just the power switch on, but it didn't seem to work. So I just made basically a jumper from the positive side down there, and then when the switch is on, it will run. And then this just a little bit past hand tight. I really grabbed it and tightened it up good. So the reason why it's sitting here ticking away and has time on it is the basic, or A0 trucks as people call them, don't come with an hour meter and just has an odometer, which I think's really silly for military equipment because it spends a lot of time idling. I wanted to run the hour meter up a little bit with a very vague, at least guesstimate on hours, and posted a message on the Facebook group. Ended up coming up with kind of what my guesstimate was. Roughly 1,000 hours on the truck with the mileage. I think I came up with like an average of 15 miles per hour with the mileage that I had on there, and then upped it to like 20. On the back side of the dash for the digital light controller, plugs in the same, but has a grounding wire that I had to make. It's underneath, you can't really see it. It goes at the bottom there. And I got it loose right now, I didn't secure it. And I used the same screw that I was grounding for the hour meter that I made. And it's not gonna function if this is not attached. The yellow wires is what I used behind the dash here for my blackout light dome lights. Right now, the switch is positioned down there. And what I did is I tapped into the circuit for the dash dimmers, and it's tapped in off of the light that controls the beacon. I left a lot of extra slack because I do plan in the future to move that switch over here so other people in the cabin can turn that light on. And then the wire is run out. It's kind of a rat's nest in here right now, but I'm going to neaten it up. I didn't record myself doing this because there's really not a whole lot to watch doing it. Just kind of very loud and hectic. I used a hole saw, and what I did is I removed this so I could cut it from the bottom out. The reason being is it's really busy on the bottom side. Just made sure that I wasn't going to cut through on like a main support bracket or anything like that. And these are just some real generic like cup hold inserts. I used a couple little beads of hot glue to keep them in place, but in case I ever want to like remove them to clean them and stuff like that, I can. But these are going to be a decent solution. Kind of keeps this flat for when you are standing here using the turret, but you can kind of use it as a catch-all for multiple things to keep them from just going all over the place. So this was a really cheap, easy solution. Actually cost me more to buy the hole saw that was the appropriate size than the cup holders, and it took me maybe like a half hour to do the job. Now I'm going to move on to doing the air dryer service, which I've already covered as well. But last time, if you remember, I had cracked, or the little retainer ring there was cracked, so I got one. All right, I just did the air dryer service, and you could see I replaced the ring. It was cracked right here. This one is not cracked, but you could actually see the corrosion. It didn't go all the way through. It cracked like this half, and the inside was good. So it held air the whole time. But I'm just at the point where I'm doing the torque on the bolts now. I'll put a link down in the description to my previous video where I showed like the whole service with all the part numbers and stuff for this. And if I have links again, I'll share them like to the service kit and stuff for this. Another annual maintenance down. Just trying to clean up the front axle here with to get some degreaser and stuff on here. Never really cleaned the front one too good. I'm using Super Clean like I always do. They're pretty cool. They're always hooking me up with stuff. And they're actually reached out. They're gonna do another giveaway like they've done a bunch of times on the channel. A little care package with a standard bottle of the regular Super Clean and then the aerosol bottle. So leave a comment that just says, I want some Super Clean, and 30 days after the publish date, I'll pick someone. And then after I reply to your comment, I'll leave the email as well, but info@callmecolt.com. So that way I can get your information, because I don't want you to leave it in a public place. And then I can get your information over to Super Clean and you'll get your box. All right, the next thing I'm going to work on is up behind the cab. I've already kind of started because I wanted to make sure my plan was going to work, but I used a Phillips screwdriver and took off the existing twist lock connector up there that is for connecting a beacon light. Got it right here, just kind of pulled over. I got to figure out which side is the positive, and I have like a bulkhead wire pass through. And what I'm going to use is a more standard quick connector that's an automotive application. So that way I can switch off and have different types of like work lights, or basically whatever I want to use back there to power like a low voltage thing. Just be able to switch it off and use that switch on the dashboard. Already a long time ago, I had switched out the little lens on the switch to a little light behind the cab. So I'm not going to do a normal parts overview because there's all kinds of random stuff and I'm going to figure it out as I go. But this is just a Harbor Freight floodlight, and the connectors that came with it are what I'm going to use because these are universal and I could find more. I'm going to use the female socket and leave that hanging out of the truck. This magnet mount, I don't remember what I had this from, to be honest. I think it was like an action camera mount, and I didn't like it, but it'll be strong enough to hold this. This was left over for something surplus military, and I cut off the Packard connectors. I'm going to use the Packard connectors in the cab. This is the wire pass-through that I'm going to use on the back of the cab. You get to just watch me work. I did exactly what I knew I was going to do, and one of the screws I dropped. So got to find that later, but hooked it up. Let's test it. Okay. Aha. Cool. So it works. I'm going to neaten up the wires, but that's it. I was able to get this done as well. I used some rivet nuts and just neatened this up over here, so it wasn't just a sloppy mess like you saw before. All right, something I decided to do just because it was making a lot of noise in the cab with leaving the light up here and having that springy piece banging, is I got just a blank end, and to make sure it wouldn't short, I put some RTV and just plugged it in there. And then if I need it, I got the light with the magnets inside the toolbox. So kind of like it like that. It's just there. It's not going anywhere. And I will paint this to make it look a little bit better, but I put a whole bunch of RTV and stuff up there too. So that's that. Here we are set up for the next thing. Took me a little bit to collect these pieces. Going to be installing an antenna the way it's intended to be installed, at least pretty darn close to it, on the passenger side. I would say the only thing that's a little bit different is this particular antenna is intended for a Humvee that has a tow missile package on it, so that way the fiberglass antenna doesn't get melted. It's just a steel whip. The reason why I decided to go with this one is you can actually pretty easily modify this one if you decide to not use it with a military communications setup. If I don't decide to build out that type of setup, I can end up just modifying this to just use with like a standard ham type radio or whatever. Got everything pretty laid out here. Thanks to someone a while back on the Facebook group, they gave me some exact measurements here of exactly where theirs on their truck that had it mounted was put in some pictures so I could reference, and I got some rivet nuts and some bolts, some hardware, antenna retainer, though that's meant for one of the fiberglass ones, but it'll work. And what I'm doing a little bit different is I got from Will in the group one of the things that pancakes in between to hold a GPS antenna. And then I'm going to be doing some pigtail wires in between to run in. Not really much else to say, so you just watch me install it and talk about it after I get it in. Looks like I'm done, but I'm not. So, of course, that bolt right there accidentally cross-threaded and then caused the riv nut to start spinning. All the other ones lined up very good. I still went forward and bolted everything up just to kind of see how it was going to go and make sure there wasn't any other issues. The other issue I had is the SMA wire to the GPS doesn't fit through the little hole that's there. I almost forgot to include real quick the SMA wire for the GPS. In order for it to fit through properly, the way it's designed to work is as you're bolting the antenna and putting it all together, you need to feed the wire up through first and then over, then bolt it all up, and then that's how it fits through with the connector and stuff. All right, finished up. Was able to fix the messed up riv nut. I ended up going with a little bit smaller of a bolt in that bottom left because the riv nut was actually the same size, but it was a smaller bolt. So that one was just off a little bit when I drilled the hole and it made it line up better. But used some wire clamps and bolts to kind of neaten up and hold the wires properly. And right now I got the antenna. I have one of the military antenna holders, and then I just tied it off to a hook. And right now it's on one of the hooks in the bed, but say if the cover or anything is on, I can basically just hook it onto anything behind the bed. And then if you want to let it go, there it is. And for those of you that know anything about radio, I tested it and it's got like a 1.5 SWR. With the Harris radio I tested it with, that's without going through the amp. And I did not seal it. I'm going to seal everything with RTV. Got the grounding strap going to the proper mount in the antenna. And slowly working on the project in here. That's a wrap on that.